Hey everyone, Ryan here at etrailer. Today on our 2024 Chevy Trax, we're going to be showing you how to install the Roadmaster Smart Diode wiring kit for incandescent bulbs. But before we get into that, let's take a minute and check these out. Before we jump right in, I figured I'd address one of the main questions that we get asked in regards to setting up these flat toes, and that's what are the main parts that I'm going to need. So there's a total of 5 main components. You'll have your base plate, your tow bar, your safety cables, your tow bar wiring, and your supplemental braking system. And with the Trax, GM also recommends, or requires rather, that you disconnect the battery whenever you're flat towing. And so to make that a little bit easier, you could always pick up an automatic battery disconnect switch as well. What tow bar wiring is going to do is pretty simple. It's just going to send the lighting functions from the back of your motorhome to the back of your Trax. That way people know what's going on and you'll be safe and legal. And so this is a great example here. We've got the hazards going on our coach, and the hazards are going on the back of our Trax. You know, that'll hold true for your left turn, your right turn, your brakes, and your tail lights, so you'll have all your bases covered there. And this particular kit is for vehicles that have incandescent bulbs, so kind of your classic regular light bulb. You know, if your Trax happens to be equipped with LED type taillights, so take a good look at yours. There's a kit specifically designed for those LEDs, so you can always look into that. But when it comes to tow bar wiring, a diode kit like this is usually what I recommend pretty much all the time, and that holds true for pretty much all the vehicles across the board. And I say that because once they're installed, you can't really tell that you changed anything. We've had a ton of good luck with these, so they're extremely reliable, and it makes setup really easy. You know, once all the parts are on here and you actually go to hook up to your motorhome, really just one step you got to do. That step would be here at the front of your vehicle. So you'll plug one end of the electrical connector into the back of your motorhome 7-way. The other end will just get plugged into the 6-way round connector on the front of your Trax. And that's all there is to it, to getting the functions to get sent to the back of your Chevy. Now there are 2 variations of this kit, if you will. One of them is going to come with the wiring, the diodes, kind of the smaller ins and outs that you need to get it installed, as well as a 6-way round connector plug and the cable. So you would use that if you don't have the cable or the connector plug. And that's the setup that we're using here today. Now the other kit comes with all that stuff I just talked about, with the exception of the cable and the 6-way round. And the reason they do that is because some of the more premier type tow bars actually come included with those 2 components, like the Roadmaster Nighthawk, for example. So if your tow bar comes with them or you already have them, that would be the kit that would be the best solution for you. Other than that, not really a whole lot to it, you know, being that these are so reliable and a good fit for the Trax, really no reason to use anything else, at least in my opinion. As far as the installation is concerned, it's really not too complicated per se, but it is time consuming, just having to route wires from the front to the back and do all that. You know, set a little bit of time aside for sure, stay patient, I'll walk you through it. If this is something that you don't want to bother with, or maybe you're having a whole flat toe set up and just want to have someone else do it, I definitely understand. You can always use our dealer locator network, and that can help you find a shop in your neighborhood. I can do this for you. But if you're going to give it a go, hang around, we'll go ahead and get started on it now. To begin our installation for our diode wiring, go ahead, pop the hood, and take your big bundle of wire, and we're going to route this down to the front where our connector plug will be mounted up. And if you have anything else that needs to go down there too, for example, our braking systems, breakaway switch wiring going to the same spot, you might as well do that at the same time, right? But with that said, I just dropped our wires straight down. We're doing this with the fascia off. So we're just got done doing the base plate, so it's a lot easier to route, but it can be done with everything put back together. Just keep that in mind. But they come through here, right on over, and end up in this area. Now, I'm going to give myself plenty of length and everything to work with, and that's because how our connector plug needs to be mounted to the front bumper. So we'll have to have this kind of ready. That way we get the bumper on, feed our wiring through, and then hook everything up, and we don't have to chop up our bumper and make a huge opening for the connector plug and things like that. We got our fascia on. You can kind of see what I was talking about with the bracket being mounted to the fascia. So that's why we did it like that. And here's our wiring poking out the bottom. What you want to do is take the rubber dust boot, put that over the wires, and we're going to separate the wiring into individual strands here. Just carefully cut in between them. And just pull them apart a few inches. What I like to do is kind of bring them all back together, cut a little bit of the ends off, just in case we nick the wiring or anything like that when we're separating them. And then we're going to strip each end back about that long. You'll want to give the copper strands a twist. That way they're nice and tight, and they'll give us a good connection. If you grab your connector plug, on the back side of it, you'll have the terminals. And what you want to do is take the set screw, back that out almost all the way. And you only need to do it to 4 of them for our diode wiring. And those 4 are going to be labeled. This one is TM for taillights. Brown wire goes there. This is GD for ground. White wire goes there. LT for left turn. Yellow wire goes there. And RT for right turn. The green wire goes there. So all we'll have to do is take the appropriate colored wire. I'll place that into the terminal. Kind of hold it down. Tighten down that set screw. We're just going to work our way around until we have all of them hooked up. Here's what the connector plug looks like once it's all hooked up. And one thing that I like to do at the very end, once we know everything's working right, I'll come back in here and put some silicone on the terminals just to help keep it protected and sealed. So for the time being, we'll just work this into the bracket. I'll get the dust cover on there. And we'll secure it down for now. Back up in the engine compartment, we can ground our white wire, and it turns out right here on the driver's side shock tower, there's a factory ground. It should work perfect. So I kind of bent the wiring here so we can cut it to length. And what you want to do is very carefully cut just the white wire. And peel it back, and the side that you want to work with is the side that's going to our connector plug. We'll strip this end back. This is how we're going to make all of our connections, whether it be a ring terminal, a spade terminal, butt connector, what have you. You'll take, in this case, a ring terminal, put it over the bare end of the wire, and crimp it down. Then this nut, can remove it with a 10 millimeter. I'll slide the ring terminal over the stud. We'll get this tightened back down. And as far as the rest of the white wire goes, you can just completely peel that off of the remaining portion of the harness. And we'll save that for later because we'll probably end up using it towards the back of the vehicle. As far as the rest of our wiring, that's going to get routed underneath the vehicle to our taillights. So I took our wire, dropped it straight down along the firewall to the underside. And especially in this area, you always want to do your best to avoid any hot or moving parts. Underneath the vehicle, this is where our wiring dropped down. And pretty easy on this car, just follow the factory lines here and use some zip ties every now and again to keep our wiring all secure. This runs along, kind of goes over towards the outside a little bit, runs up along through here. Got it going up and over our subframe. Along through here. I try to kind of put the wiring on the back side of this factory loom to keep it as far away from the exhaust as possible. And then once you get to about this point, what you can do is separate the green wire from the harness, all right? And you can cut just the brown wire in half and peel that back a few inches on each end. And then what you want to do is strip the insulation back, and then on one of the ends, you can take that brown wire and then that remaining portion of white wire that we had and twist those stripped ends together. As far as the other side, the brown wire goes, you don't really need to do anything special there. And you can take a butt connector, put that over both of the ends, crimp it down, and I did upgrade to a heat shrink style connector. The ends seal up, helps protect it against corrosion and stuff a little bit better, but the one that comes with everything will work just fine. Then you put the other end of the brown wire in there, get it crimped, and if you happen to use a heat shrink, you can pick those up here at eTrailer if you want. You come back with a heat gun to seal up the ends. After making that connection, I taped it up just for a little extra protection there. And we'll let our yellow and brown wire sit here for now. The green wire and the white wire that we now added, those are going to get routed to the passenger side. So I just have them going kind of behind our bumper here, all the way across. This is where it comes out. We'll let this sit here for now too, and we can go up top and get our taillights removed. To get our taillights out, you can open up the hatch, and wherever we're going to be working, I put some tape and a little piece of foam here just so we don't scratch anything up. So you can do that if you want. But the way to get the lights out, we have these two caps. You can take a little flathead screwdriver or something, pry up on them, and that'll expose a T15 fastener in each one of them. We'll get these removed. Then we can grab our tail light, start to work it out of position. A lot of times they're going to be real tight, so it might be beneficial to come over on the side and pry on it lightly. You don't want to force anything. So it feels like it's pop free. And that's what was holding it in, those two alignment tabs there. So we got a couple of choices we can do. We can actually physically remove all the bulbs and the connections. The connector is behind all the panels up there, but if you pull the grommet out, that gives you a little bit more working room. I'm just going to leave everything hooked up, but what we need to do is test these wires to figure out which ones we need to tie into. In order to test our wires, we're going to have a ground for our test light to figure out which wire does what. So what I like to do is hook our ground wire up first for our diode and use it as a ground for our test light. That way we can kind of make sure that that's a solid ground too. So the kit comes with 2 white pieces of wire, about a foot long, crimper ring terminal on one end, spade terminal on the other end, and they give you some self-tapping screws that you can use. And I'm going to secure this right there. My wire's getting all tangled here. Definitely don't want it to do that. To figure out our lighting functions, I used our ground to hook up, and we're looking for the taillight signal. And I think it's going to be these red wires, if I had to guess. So I'll check those. I got our taillights on. So I got power there. And power there. So those are the 2 wires that we're going to be working with. What you're going to want to do, turn your taillights off, and then cut those 2 red wires. You'll strip the ends back. And on each end, you want to tie them together like this. All right, so there's those 2 tied together. You'll take a red spade terminal, put it over both the ends, get it crimped. I'm going to do the same thing for these 2 ends. So once you got these hooked up and everything here, the side that is closest to the front of the car, you're going to grab your diode and plug it into the terminal labeled car brake in, like that. Our ground wire will get plugged into ground, and then the other side of our diode where it says car brake out, that's where you're going to plug that into. And so all that's left to do now, I'll go underneath and feed our wiring that we left back here up into the taillight pocket. That way we can get those hooked up. I just went underneath the vehicle and pushed the wiring right up into position. It's pretty wide open down there. And cut it to length and crimped on a red terminal on each end. With the brown being our taillight signal, we'll plug that into RV tail. And with the yellow being for a stop and turn, you'll plug that into RV brake. So what I've done, there's sticky tape on the back of these diodes. I just secured it to the back of our taillight. And something that I like to do to help keep everything sealed up and everything is come back with a little bit of silicone. Just put a layer over the top, help keep moisture and stuff out, and kind of act as a buffer too, helping to keep the terminals connected and whatnot. So we'll, with that all done, we'll get everything lined back up, and reinstall our taillight the opposite way that we removed it. Over on our passenger side, more or less did the same exact thing. Mounted up our diode there, and where it says car brake in, that's where we put the doubled up red wires into. The RV tail, you put our new white wire. RV brake, put our new green wire. Car brake out, that goes to the other doubled up red wires there. And of course our ground, that's grounded the same location. And so what I'll do, I'll come back, I'll put my silicone there and get this light reinstalled. Now that we have everything hooked up, it's a good idea to test our wiring just to make sure that it's working properly. So I'm plugged into a test box, which is simulating a motorhome. You can use your coach, but keep in mind, if it happens to have any issues on its own, it might mislead you and think it's something you did on the vehicle side, but we'll go ahead and run through all of our functions. We'll try our taillights, our left turn signal, our right turn signal, and our brake lights. With everything working, that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Roadmaster Smart Diode Wiring Kit on our 2024 Chevrolet Trailblazer.